Good afternoon, I'm Mr. Rich. Thank you for joining me. Solubility rules an important topic here because when you're looking at chemical reactions, especially those which involve ionic compounds, it's important to know what's soluble, what's not. You can categorize everything into two parts. One are the set of compounds which are always soluble except, or the other compounds which are always insoluble except. These are the exceptions. When you're looking here at this first category, we'll focus here only the first category. If you have compounds which have lithium and you have potassium, you have sodium, you have acetate, which comes from acetic acid, we'll just call it that, we'll call that acetate. You have nitrate, you got ammonium. Compounds of these will always be soluble. There'll be little to no exceptions. Maybe there won't be any exceptions at all. When you have ionic compounds which have lithium, potassium, sodium, acetate, nitrate, or ammonium, the metal salts involving these will always be soluble. Let's look at another category of these. If you have compounds of these style which have chloride, bromide, and iodide, these will always be soluble except unless these are attached to, let's say, lead, or they're attached to silver, or they're attached to mercury, but double. In terms of a diatomic mercury divalent. When you have chlorides, bromides, and iodides attached to metals, they're generally soluble except they're lead iodides, lead chlorides, lead bromides, or silver halides, or mercury or dimercury halides. Then they would be obviously insoluble. So those are the exceptions with regards to that. When you have compounds which are involving sulfates, they're soluble. Metal compounds of sulfates are soluble now except for these metals. These metals will be your strontium or your barium sulfate, strontium sulfate. These will be insoluble. You know, a very common one is calcium sulfate, very frequently found in hard water. Even lead sulfate is insoluble. So you see, these are your main group of compounds which are always soluble. These ones are always soluble, little to no exceptions. And then the halides have these exceptions. They become insoluble when attached to that. Sulfates are always soluble except when they're attached to that they become insoluble. You know, like lithium sulfate, sodium sulfate, iron sulfate, they're generally soluble. When you attach the sulfates to those compounds, they become insoluble. So that right there is the first group of compounds and it's done. Now we look at the second category of compounds and we're going to talk about these compounds. These are always insoluble. Now the exceptions are they will be soluble. We're talking here about hydroxides. Hydroxides like iron hydroxide, lead hydroxide, silver hydroxide. These type of compounds are always insoluble. What are the exceptions which would make them soluble? You know what they would be, the alkali metals. You know those are lithium, potassium, sodium. You can even throw some other compounds like ammonium. Ammonium hydroxide is very soluble with that. You can have a bit of a mild exception if the compound is like a calcium, or it's barium, or it's strontium. You know what you're looking here at? You're looking here at the alkaline earth metals. The alkaline earth metals involving calcium, barium, strontium, and hydroxide are slightly soluble. They're not insoluble, but they're slightly soluble. They're not freely soluble. The next category of insoluble compounds are the sulfides, like iron sulfide, lead sulfide, silver sulfide. Those type of compounds are always insoluble. But if you attach these to certain metal compounds or other ions, they become soluble. And what are they? They're your standard ones like lithium, potassium, sodium, ammonium. Ammonium ion makes sulfide soluble. Even calcium sulfide is soluble. Barium sulfide is soluble. You can even throw in strontium sulfide. These alkaline earth metals, the alkali metals and ammonium will make sulfide soluble. They're generally insoluble, but with these they'll be soluble. There's a last category. You can bring in here the compounds such as phosphates and carbonates. These compounds are always insoluble unless you have these items, and these items will make these two soluble. And what are they? They're again your standards. Lithium, potassium, sodium. You can even throw in ammonium. Ammonium phosphate, ammonium carbonate, it's soluble. Everything else generally with this will make it insoluble. These are very frequently seen in hard water. Many states here in America or many countries around the world will have water with these, and you have hard water. You'll also see a lot of hard water with the hydroxides. But keep in mind what I've shown you. You have a category of compounds which are always soluble except for the exceptions. Then you have a category of compounds which are always insoluble, then the exceptions. These type of compounds become soluble when you bring on with the alkali metals and ammonium. That right there will be the end of this video. Thank you for watching.